Dear God in heaven, Lord, we thank you for the blessing and the privilege, the technology that you've provided, that has been provided for us to continue to gather together and study together, though we are scattered across the land in various places. It's a blessing to come together face to face. And when that is not always possible, we are thankful for this modality for us to be able to come together. We thank you and praise you. We ask you for your presence to be with us tonight as we continue to look at the 10 risks for 2024, that you would help us, Lord, to grow in understanding of what is right and what is wrong, grow in understanding of the Sunday law and our test when it comes to leadership and what the Sunday law actually represents when it comes to gender equality. Help us to rightly understand equality, that your true and perfect law of equality would be written upon our heart, as it is then that we would be walking in righteousness, Lord, and giving glory to you by reflecting your character of love, and your character of compassion and empathy, and the hatred against oppression. And help us to rightly understand these things, that we would have wisdom as well. For if any of us lack wisdom, we come to you, Lord, and we ask for wisdom. May you bless us, guide us, and direct us. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay. Let's go to a share screen here. That's the video, but I think we should take this in order. Unless anybody wants to jump ahead, we should take this in order. But the video is 37 minutes, so maybe we can watch our time and try to have time for it. And give me just 1 second. No, that's okay. I think I'll be okay. I don't think you see any black boxes, right?
Looks
No.
good.
Okay. Yeah, only if I do the video does the black boxes show up. Okay. Would somebody like to start out with the reading?
I'll start out.
Okay. So we read the introduction, right? I don't know if we need to review that so we can get through this one, but we read the introduction and this is the first one. Thank you, Jackie.
You're welcome. Glad to do it. Okay, so good evening, everyone. Number 1, the United States vs. itself. I think that below this first paragraph, it's a little tiny. Can you make it any bigger?
Yeah, hold on 1 second.
Okay, thanks.
Better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
Thank you. And it's a little, I'm not getting the whole end of on the right side for me, left side for you probably. There we go. Yeah,
Good.
that's
Then
great.
I can see my chat box a little bit better. Thanks.
Good. That works perfect. Thank you.
Takes up my whole screen so I can't see the chat, but I got it now. Thanks.
Okay, it looks good. The United States vs. itself. While America's military and economy remain exceptionally strong, its political system is more dysfunctional than that of any other advanced industrial democracy. And in 2024, faces further weakening. The U.S. presidential election will worsen the country's political division, testing American democracy to a degree the nation hasn't experienced in 150 years, and undermining U.S. credibility on the global stage. We're already seeing this.
Yes.
As we move on into the new month tomorrow. Tomorrow's the 1st of February. So the U.S. political system is remarkably divided, and its legitimacy and functionality have eroded accordingly. Public trust in core institutions such as Congress, the judiciary, and the media is at historic lows. Polarization and partisanship are at historic highs. Add algorithmically amplify disinformation to the mix, and Americans no longer believe in a common set of settled facts about the nation and the world.
Yeah, I just want to comment real quick on that. I did not have
Mhm.
time to read a couple of articles that I wanted to read. I mean, I did some studying this morning, um, but I saw several articles pop up on um, the heightenedness of conspiracy theories and how it's coming to the place where nobody's going to believe anything. And I wish a couple of them were the Associated Press. So I don't know if anybody else saw them, but that's I don't know.
It's in the,
Usually when I
yeah,
see multiple articles on the same topic, it's definitely it draws my attention, and that was what it was at. Go ahead, Jackie.
yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that. I mean, this is on the news all over the place, especially today. The conspiracy theories out
Yeah, so
there.
it's on the news as well. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I was watching NBC, and they cover things pretty accurately, I'd say. And oh, they're even using Taylor Swift now
yes, I
as.
saw that too.
Did you see that?
Yeah,
Wow, I'll tell you, that's one. Yeah, that's going to be a big one because look at how many people follow Taylor Swift. I mean, millions of people.
yeah,
Her fans. I mean, she has so much influence, and it was a um, Democratic that Biden is trying to win votes from her because she carries so much weight for the public to vote,
yes,
especially young people that are following her. And a lot of that came through Fox News, who was reporting this, and it was completely conspiratorial.
yeah. I
Not that
did see a
she
couple
isn't a
of that.
Democrat, but some of the things they're saying out there on Fox and other channels that are so far to the right that are making it look like the Democrats are all mixed up and they're the ones that are at fault with this.
Yeah, she has a voice. She has a platform.
Mm-hmm.
She is a woman, and um, I haven't looked into her that much to say one way or the other. Maybe others have. Um, she liberal feminist, but we definitely see between conspiracy theories and her when we consider the external sources that are speaking to people. Um, that but when this is all over, nobody will have an excuse.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's coming out, so clearly now, the issues and how it's being distorted, of course, is, you know, from the right using it, for against Biden and the Democrats. This we'll probably see this even more, especially as AI is taking
Yes,
over too.
yes, yeah. Because I saw somebody posted it was a kind of a collage of pictures. There was four pictures put together, and the commentary was that it was all done by AI, and it showed Trump and Biden together in four different pictures, being friends and what have you, doing this and that, and sitting around in warm sweaters like they're out having a nice time, and it was just and it looks very real. So people are not going to know
Oh,
what's real and what's not in this
oh,
election.
it's a huge subject. I don't know if you saw some of the quotes that were made by different ones. I was one, but I think Susan was the one that brought it out about identification of people from AI. Could you tell? It was a test. Could you tell out of 10 pictures which one was real and which one was AI generated. And so I took the test and Penny took it. There were several others. And I got 7 out of 10. And oh, Troy said he got 3 out of 10. But I got 7. And I asked myself, how did I get 7 when they looked so alike? They looked so like there was no difference. How could you even tell? And it was pure guess. That's the only way I arrived at 7 was I just guessed at it and I was lucky.
So that doesn't say anything for our skills. It being
Absolutely
able to
not.
tell the difference. Yeah, yeah. Well, Gina
I
said
don't
2, she
think
got 3.
I don't really think skill had anything to do with it.
No.
From my opinion, my perspective, well, I only got 3, but what I noticed is I started out good, right? Strong. But as the pictures came along, how can I say, the ones that looked fake were real and the ones that looked real were fake.
We're fake.
So when I got, I think, to my 4th one or something like that, I thought, I think this must be AI, and it was the opposite. So then I thought, I'm going to try and outsmart this thing now that I see what they're doing, right? But still I couldn't get it, and I only got 3 right. It was really hard, and they make, I only wish they had more diversity in the faces. It was from New York Times, but you know, if they'd had some representatives of the Black community or Asian community, I thought about it after I had posted it. I don't think they didn't have any people of color, you know?
No, they
But
didn't.
it was very hard because they made the men, they look so natural. Like
Yes.
outdoor pictures, and I thought, oh, that's a real picture. Nope, it was AI. But
Yeah.
anyway, it was interesting because, you know, that's just a small little taste or glimpse of what's happening on the larger scale. And the AI is advancing at such a fast pace that the tools that they have, the AI tools that you can purchase, of course, everything's a la carte these days, but you can purchase tools to help you identify what's AI and what's not. But those tools are, and they're also AI made. And those tools are behind the advancement of the creation of the AI. So the
Yeah.
tools don't keep up. And I think Penny just posted maybe a half hour ago about now they've done I think it's like an AI generated rape through the goggles or whatever that they
Oh,
have.
the reality goggles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And something else. Anyway, it's going to get, you know, people already are, I don't know what the word would be, where cognitive dissonance or whatever I think might be the correct term. You
Yeah.
know, where it's coming at you from so many directions, it's so overwhelming that you just sort of cave to it and go numb to it. And you know, it's like people are just kind of like sleepwalking into this authoritarian system that's coming. But
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask this question while you were sharing, Jackie. I was thinking, why did they say at the top of this article that 150 years from 2024? Because I'm like, that wasn't the founding. What was that? And so it was the Reconstruction period, I guess, the end of the Reconstruction period. And Ulysses S. Grant was 150 years ago. And Ulysses S. Grant was the president. And I just got a brief just to try and understand what they meant, that the political situation, there hasn't been that much division in 150 years, right? Because I was thinking the division that led up to maybe the Civil War, but 1874 is past the Civil War. And so it was the Democrats, which at that time were the Republicans, I believe, and the Republicans were the Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
And the Democrats had taken hold of the everything again. And I guess so there was like the backlash that comes from the civil rights that were trying to be passed for the Black folks. Something to that effect. I don't know if anyone else thought about it when it said political division, 150 years.
Yeah, I did over slavery.
Yeah, but
But
it was it was after that, because 1874.
Mhm.
So it was Reconstruction, and I still haven't gotten into Reconstruction enough to, you know, give any tidbits on it.
Yeah,
But
that history. I mean, it's
yeah,
very
it's that
interesting that
history.
during that history, because we can always look back in history and, we know history repeats, maybe in
Right,
a different situation, but it's a repeat.
right.
So you can
But that's
compare and contrast it.
right. And that's why when we were reading this article, I wanted to know what they were referring to. And maybe as we go on, it will explain more. But anyhow, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And also for putting that on the Bible thread. It was very interesting. I was glad I could participate in that. Thank
Yeah, it
you.
tickled me actually that a lot of people did try it, and I think Larry said he only got 3 like me. And then I think Natalie came in with like, I forget, 5 or
She
something
had
like that.
5, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, wow, winner, vegan chicken dinner, because I
Yeah,
was
I
like,
know.
"God,
That was
how'd
so.
you do that?" And then Russell tried and he didn't do so good. And then he posted articles on the tools or the ways that you can maybe identify a picture. But if they don't show the hands, because I guess the hands are deformed in some AI pictures, but this was just the faces. And it said that if you notice, you can tell it's an AI generated picture if the background is blurry and the face is clear. But I went and looked at those pictures again, and some of the real pictures, the background was blurry. So that's not a guaranteed way to figure it out either.
No.
But some people retook the test and did better. I think the one who took it on their first attempt was a Keck. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right. And he got like, I forget, I think 9 or something. I mean, some unbelievable number on his first attempt. I don't know how he did it. But most of us didn't do all that hot.
Oh,
And that's just a
yeah.
small taste, of what we're up against.
Oh, yes,
I
very
mean,
much so. Yeah. I wanted to share too on AI, just for additional information on how it looks out in the business world. I was at my dentist today. I had an appointment and I was talking to my dentist, and she's a woman. And absolutely, she gave me some heads up on AI because um, out there, where products are available, whatever, and especially with technology. She was sharing that she's been contacted to get on the program with using AI in her dental office. And the reason that's driving, at least as she said in the dental world, is that the patients are saying that they're not getting the honest facts about when they're diagnosed with problems with an x-ray, with cavities or needing certain work done. And of course, they've they've always just had x-rays. Well, now they offer a program in AI that diagnoses it so closely that there is no counteracting it. If the dentist is not telling you the truth, so the patient might think, well, then just buy this program with AI and you can get an accurate assessment of where your dental health is. And I said, oh, Dr. Carla, what did you think of that? And she says, I rejected it. I mean, if she's telling me this, we know in the medical field, it's going on too. So, and they're using it for all kinds of things in the medical world. So, with physical health, body health problems, whatever, it's highly, highly advanced. And we don't even know. This is what my dentist was telling me. She said, and you look at it, I mean, these programs that they would have to have are very, very expensive because it's very, very high technology. And to even know how to work it, how do you apply this in a dental office? And I just thought it was so interesting because we were talking about world events and things happening. And she and her assistant were both into knowing just what's going on out there. And I was just amazed because there's so much reporting on it. It's just what side are you going to end up on? Because remember, the personal is political. And if you're going to lean to the right on any subject at all, then you're going to end up on the right. And she revealed a little bit about where she was going to end up, and I hope not. And a lot of it is conspiratorial, was on the subject of socialism and the bowing the knee from those that are the lesser. Let's say, I'm not saying that I see this that way, of course, but socialism attracts people because they get handouts from the government. We know that. And so where people get the thought is that the socialist agenda will attract more people to vote for people that are pushing the social agenda, if they are the ones that are the majority of the voters, then they would elect a president that's going to give them all the social benefits. But that isn't the case because the majority of the people don't vote. There's a smaller majority percentage of people that vote. And it's the construct of what the Republicans are doing now, even with Taylor Swift, to pull the votes away from the socialistic agenda that Biden would stand for, or democracy, and pull them over to the right side with the amount of voters that are actually voting, citizens in the country that could vote. So it was interesting when my dentist said this, because she was looking at it like, well, in the socialist agenda, no wonder people vote for a Democrat, because they get everything they want through a socialistic agenda. So I'd like to hear what other people might say about it, but then we might not get through this article. It just gave me a lot of thought as to, where people are coming from. Intelligent people, educated people. So I'll go on reading a little bit because we've only gone through one paragraph here. If anybody has any thoughts. Anybody there?
Yeah, we're here. I'm here.
Oh, okay, it was quiet, so.
I'm assuming everybody else is there.
Yeah, is there any thoughts on what I said? If not, I'll go on reading. Okay. So we're on the second paragraph, I believe.
Yes.
Okay. The two major parties, likely presidential candidates, are uniquely unfit for office. Former President Donald Trump faces dozens of felony criminal charges, many directly related to actions taken during his term in office. Most critically, including his efforts to overturn the results of a free and fair election. In any stable, well-functioning democracy, the 2024 contest would be principally about those. The United States is presently far from that. On the other side of the aisle, President Joe Biden would be 86 years old and the end of his second term. The vast majority of Americans want neither to lead the nation. And I'm seeing that too, just with things I hear, on the news, that Biden, they don't like Biden. People are backing away from him, except for people on his base who would vote naturally Democratic. But they're looking at him as being old, and he might have some degenerative problems with dementia and so on and so forth. So I'm reading it and saying, yeah, that's what I'm saying, and what I think of what's going on out there is what people are saying.
Yeah, I can add a comment to that if it's okay.
All right.
I attended Ruth Ben-Ghiat's, I think I shared this with Elaine, so I hope I'm not repeating myself. I worry myself like, oh gosh, like, am I getting like my mom? But on Friday, right? And she had a guest, I forget his name, it's a hard name. He's a Democrat, and he served in the Democratic Senate like 10 years ago or so, but he's still active. I forget what state. Anyhow, he's a expert sort of on like the Palestinian and all of that, right? And he was talking about what was going on. He also, she's met him through teaching because she teaches at the university. And so that's how sometimes she'll come by her guests, right? And the people that sit in on her Zoom meetings on Fridays usually will ask questions in the chat, and she's not always knowledgeable about every kind of subject, right? She's good overall, but we all have our specialty, right? And her specialty is fascism and all of that, right? Studying all of that. And so she had him on, and he was saying that he had voted. It kind of, my mouth dropped open. Nobody could see it because you don't share. Your cameras are off. But he began talking about the problems, with Palestine and what's going on in Gaza, as he understood it. And he then went on to say, and I voted, I'll tell you here, he said, I voted for Biden in 2020 because he's a Democrat, but he said, I will not vote for Biden in this 2024. I'm going to vote for Trump. And I thought, oh, why? Right? And he said, and this makes no sense really, but I think a lot of people are sort of reasoning to their best ability, and a lot of people, and they don't have the godly insight that we do, the message, the lines that we do. And a lot of people are disgusted with sort of how Biden has handled this thing with Israel, right? And how he sort of has allowed Israel kind of like full reign. And he said that and because there is a rise of authoritarians globally, and because Netanyahu is such a right-wing authoritarian, that he has decided he will vote for Trump if that's the two choices, because it will take someone like Trump to go against another authoritarian and all of the global rise of authoritarians.
Talk
And
about
I
making
thought,
no sense.
I know to us it makes absolutely no sense, but I'm wondering if other people reason in that regard the same way. They don't have the wisdom that we've been given, understanding of. And this Palestinian Israel issue has undercut all the Gen Z like voters that came out, in hordes for Biden during the 2020 election. This has chopped away at the young folks, because many of the young folks in the universities are protesting, right, about these horrendous things that are, because of what Israel is pummeling the Gaza Strip and the history on it, and how the Palestinians have been just pushed and shoved right into that little piece of land. And so, yeah, well, we already know Trump's gonna win, but that just kind of goes to what you're saying too, Jackie. And for them to say that Biden has dementia, I've seen the same set of Trump, but oh, I don't know. Anyway, it's a frightening times that we are in. We're doomed.
Yes.
Without this message, you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Those were good thoughts you shared. And it's the way it's going, especially with thinking that Trump, as an authoritarian, can bring these other authoritarians under his authority. And it doesn't, I mean, they don't realize that the authoritarian is only interested in his own self. He isn't interested so much in pleasing the people or doing the people's bidding that vote for him to put him in there, although he says he is. But don't we see this? And we saw it with Hitler. Way back.
and we used to, as kids in history, and we were shown that, right, when I was growing up,
Right.
we used to say, how could those people have fallen for that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And, look, we can see how, it's happening now. So,
Yeah. Right before our very eyes.
yep. The
Yeah.
very people who said it could never happen here,
That's right. Here we are. And like you said, if we did not have this truth from God, who knows where we'd be. I know I wouldn't be on the right side. Or I don't mean the right conservative, but I would not be on God's side. Liberal. Democracy. Yeah. So we got through this division. Did you want I can keep reading, or would someone else like to read? It's been having a discussion, but it's been good.
If I'd like to make a little comment,
Sure.
it's just my own opinion, but I think Biden's actually done a really good job. When you look at all the things he's done, he's actually done amazing things. I mean,
agree.
he's done a lot of really good things. I don't see him having dementia the things that he's done, it's impossible for anybody to do the things that he's done, and then people come out and say he's got dementia. I mean, because he's done things that no president has done. It's just that the media they're not covering it. They're not giving enough true coverage on, I don't know what it is, but they're not covering Joe Biden, all the wonderful things he's done. And the left, the left and the far left, man, they have gotten very, very radical. I mean, I see something, I mean, I don't know if you guys see it, but I don't even want to call myself a liberal anymore because of what the left is doing. They are doing some pretty bad stuff. And, you know, with the Israel and Hamas thing, I mean, you know, and the colleges, they've lost their way too, because before they were they were on the right side, you know, on the truth side. Now they're not. Now they're all believing in, they're believing in all kinds of wrong things, and they're not believing in truth. You know, they're backing up the Palestinians. And what people don't understand is, you know, they say, oh, civilian Palestinians, but if you really do a deep dive, there are no civilian Palestinians. Hamas is a terroristic state. I don't know, I can't use state, but it's a terroristic place. Everybody there is, the children grow up to be terrorists. It's not like there's any civilians in Gaza. There just isn't. And if there are, like there might be very, very few, if they find that there's a Palestinian that has any type of leaning towards sympathizing over Israel, for one, they're killed immediately, and their families are too. So none of the Palestinians can show any type of sympathy towards Israel. And what we have to see is, we really have to take a look at is, if this happened in America, what do you think America would do? Hamas had a very strategic plan. I mean, when you look at what they did, they came in and they surrounded Israel and came in 30 different places. They took out, Israel has all these security posts all around. They took out those security posts first. Well, not first, but they started sending rockets just as a deterrent, you know, and then they took out all the security posts so that Israel really couldn't have, there was like no like communications and stuff. I mean, really, when you look at the plan and what they did, it's genius in a very evil way. And so when I look at what they did, and the plan was just, I mean, it was unbelievable the way they did it. And I have to think that the third woe, when it comes to America, because really Palestinians and we all know that the United Nations has been infiltrated by Hamas.
13.
We already know. We know, and it's not just the workers on the ground. It's at the highest levels in the United Nations. Hamas has got them, whether they paid them off, doesn't matter. The agenda is the UN has been bought and paid for. They're done. You've never seen not one, it's not just UNRWA, it's the United Nations has never condemned Hamas at all, but they have condemned Israel. But they never condemned what Hamas did on January 7th.
October, yeah.
October 7th, sorry, yeah. They never condemned it. And these are all very, you know, the UN is gone. They are gone because now they are for, you know, that terroristic Islamic type of mentality is, first agenda is to take Israel out. They hate Israel. They just want to take them out. And the next agenda is America, because America represents Democracy represents everything that they're against. So they're going to take Israel out first, because that's their agenda. The next thing is America, because they want an entire worldwide caliphate. That's what they want. That's what really they want. And this all started, in the early 1900s. This started way before. There was an attack in Israel in 2003, and it was called the Battle of Jenin, or attack on Jenin in and it was a small kind of thing where all these like United Nations and Amnesty International, they said, oh, Israel did this, this genocide. They killed like 500 innocent people in Jenin, and they did this whole thing, and the UN was part of it, and so was Amnesty International. And then after this whole thing, they found out that was a lie. That didn't even happen. What happened was there were militant Hamas people that went and fought with Israel, and the militant Hamas people, they had like, I don't know, 50 people died on one side, another 50. They had around the same amount, but they were all militants. They were all terrorists that were killed. So Israel killed about 55 of them, but they were all terrorists. And then what the UN condemned it and said that they had killed 500 civilians, and that never even happened. And when they did the research and they found out that there was no 500 civilians, but that actually happened. So when we think about, what's happening in Gaza, and people are saying, there's 26,000 people that are died, and then really there's no really confirmation. I mean, like nobody knows if that's really even true, because for one, no one's been in there to check. And if you have 26,000 people dead, you would probably able to see it from satellite. You'd have to see this because that's a mass grave they would have to be doing. So maybe you could see it from satellite if there is a mass grave. And I'm not saying that there aren't, people have died, yes, for sure, but we're believing in Hamas because Hamas is the one that's putting that information out. Okay, so we really talk about, what we're talking about with the AI and all that. Well, I mean, even information, it's just getting worse and worse. And so what we think that, even the mainstream media, now we have to check. Now we have to check mainstream media. We even have to check the sources that we thought were very resourceful, like the New York Times and the Washington Post. I mean, this is getting worse. It's getting worse, and so I don't know about you guys, but I see, I see something really, there was a mufti in the early 1900s, and his name was Haj Amin al-Husseini, and he had a direct relationship with Nazi Germany. He didn't like the Jews. This was like, I don't know, early 1900s. He didn't like the Jews either. He wanted them out. And Jews were already there, and this is 1900s, okay? And he wanted to wipe them out, and he saw what was happening in Germany, and he liked what was going on. So he actually went over there, and he actually sat down with Hitler. They have pictures of him. His agenda was so brutal because, in the beginning, Hitler didn't want to wipe out the Jews. He just wanted them out of his country. So he was going to expel them. But then this Mufti guy, Husseini, he said, no, don't do that, because then they're going to come over here. We don't want them coming over here. You have to wipe them out completely. And so that's where that mindset came. And so when you really look at it, the ties between Nazi Germany and Islam, or what are you, the Muslim mindset, the militant Muslim mindset is very, very, is like one. So this Nazi Germany mentality you know, is really, it never went away. It's still a factor today. It's coming back even stronger. And it's not just wiping out the Jews, because now, you know, the whole world is anti-Semitic now. Everybody hates Israel. And it's not in one region in Germany anymore. It's the whole world. And where did this Nazi Germany mindset come from? Where did that, it was always here. And it was deep seated in the Muslim mindset. It was always there amongst the militant Muslim mindset, you know, that just wants to rule the world and wants the Islamic caliphate to rule the world. And they're going to take America out because America represents everything that they're against. You know, as long as America is there as a watchdog, as always interfering in other wars to keep peace, they don't want that. They can't have that. So America is a really big Satan, big demon. But in order to get to America, they first have to wipe Israel out. So they have to have the whole world hate Israel, you know? So, you know, I just, you know, things are not what they really mean. Things are not what they are. I mean, we really have to be really careful now. Even the news that we're watching, even the things that we're reading, is just rapidly becoming not just AI pictures anymore. I mean, it's the news itself that is not true. And you have to research and you have to really dig deeper. Even the sources that we thought were going to be true, I'm seeing that's it's not working out that way. Anyway.
Go ahead, Logita.
Actually, it's Val.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I have a question regarding what Donna just explained to us. And the question is, so we know that 9/11 was the harbinger at the beginning of the third woe. And I believe that we established at the close of probation is when Islam will attack the United States. So the question that I have, so the Islam's role against the United States, it's not in question. That's already been established. But the question that I have is that Elder Parminder has taught that the reason that Islam attacks the United States because United States is the army of Rome. So in order to get to Rome, it has to attack the army, which is the United States. So have we established at some point, because I know now, you know, I mean, after 1991, right, after the first joint venture, right, United States and Pope John Paul II taking down the King of the South, they're not friends anymore. So is there a point? Is there a point where United States no longer become the army of Rome? Or is Israel now playing an additional role? That radical Islam is attacking America first via Israel. So I'm a little confused.
No,
So
no, I don't. No, no. There's a deep-seated hatred against Jews, and it goes back to there's a specific hatred for Israel and Jewish people specifically, and part of that comes, and this has been going on for hundreds of years. Partly they say because Jesus was, you know, they say that, you know, the Jews killed Jesus. That's one part. there's many different reasons. Well, remember that the elders of Zion, it was the protocols of the elders of Zion. That came out in the early 1900s. Is anybody familiar with that? The protocols of the elders of Zion?
I'm
I've
not.
heard the name. That's it. I don't know a lot about it.
Okay, so it was this propaganda, huge, just changed the world in the mindset of Jewish people. It was this propaganda that was created by the Russian Tsar. And he wanted to make the Jewish people like the evil people that everybody should hate and not want, because at the time the Jewish people did have a lot of wealth. You know, some of them had wealth and they had money and they had, you know, they had businesses, and they just always have had, the Jewish people have always had a desire to be excellent in whatever they did. So whenever they did something, they excelled at it. Well, people are always jealous. Jealousy is always there. And so the Tsar put out, he put this propaganda out. It was called the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. And it painted the Jewish people as pretty much Satan, like they are Satan incarnate on earth. And it went all over the world, and people from then on, governments from then on, wanted to wipe the Jews out. And so that's kind of where that deep-seated, so that has never changed. People still hate the Jews, especially in the Arab Muslim world. They hate the Jews because they think Jewish people are really like Satan. They like come from the devil. That's why they can kill them with no mercy. They can kill babies with no mercy because they think that they're doing God's will, because they think that these are the children from Satan. You see, I mean, that's the mindset. That's how they think. And that's how they can do these heinous things to innocent babies and children. I mean, they don't see them as babies and children. They see them as demons. And that mindset has been perpetuated for a very long, like millenniums. I mean, for a long time. And so, no, they don't hate Israel because they hate America. They hate Israel because they hate Jewish people, period. That's basically it. Now, because America is the greatest support for Israel, then that makes America enemy number 2 after enemy number 1, which would be Israel. So, and also to America, is the great Satan, because, people in America live sinful lives. They're just morally unjust. And then they're corrupting the world with their democracy that they're spreading on earth, which to them is not, democracy is not a good thing, because they want a caliphate. They want Sharia law, because Sharia law is just and true to them. So that's what they would like the whole world to be. They want a total caliphate Sharia law world where everybody worships Allah. And that's their goal. And so you got to take out the great Christian power, which would be America.
So
So
going to, thank you. Or go ahead if you're not finished yet. Go ahead. Were you finished?
I'm finished. I'm done.
Okay, sorry about that. Sorry about that. I was just thinking of what you're saying and listening to Phil's question as well, because I've been working on, you're doing a lot of review of Israel, or not Israel, but Islam. And because I think Phil brought up the Harbinger. In the history that I've been looking at, in the videos that I've been reviewing, we see that when pagan Rome made a Sunday law, began the 4 trumpets. And what was the purpose of the 4 trumpets? Anybody?
The first 4 trumpets was to take down pagan Rome.
Right. So they make a Sunday law, and the first 4 trumpets come, and they do take down pagan Rome. So then the papacy is now in place, and they make a Sunday law. We're all familiar with that, right? 538, that they did make a Sunday, they added to, enhanced, I don't remember the words to say. this made it stronger, something, Sunday Law 538, and what happened as a result of that?
The fifth trumpet,
Right,
or yeah, the first woe,
fifth and sixth trumpet,
right?
and the first and second, what was it? I think that's what you said.
Yeah, first and second woe. Uh-huh.
Right. So pagan Rome makes a Sunday Law. They get the four trumpets. Papal Rome makes a Sunday Law. They get the fifth and sixth trumpet, the first and second woe, which we'll be looking at later, not tonight. And then the United States makes a Sunday Law. So what can we expect to see?
So okay, so all right, so I think I'm getting the connection. So the United States is pagan Rome,
Yeah. Yeah, because you make this transition from pagan to papal, right?
and then papal to pagan.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but yeah. So because you had pagan to papal, and now we're looking at our history, and you basically have the United States, because the Catholic Church is always pagan still, right?
Right.
And so, but you have the transition from, um, I don't know if it's right to say ancient Rome, but pagan Rome definitely. But then you have pagan Rome, and then you have modern Rome. So you have the three Romes. You have pagan Rome, papal Rome, and modern Rome.
Modern Rome.
Each one of them makes a Sunday Law. And so
Okay.
so when the United States makes a Sunday Law, that's modern Rome making a Sunday Law and brings on the woe.
Okay.
We know the woe
Okay.
began at 9/11 as a harbinger, right? The woe began. So that's why we see, and I've been looking at the history and got a lot of questions going, more questions than answers right now through my mind, but when you go back into that history of Josiah Litch, where Josiah Litch's history was his writings and his explanation of Daniel 11:40 was right, because in Daniel 11:40, it was Ellen White. I got to make sure I have this straight. Uriah Smith said that these. I've been watching a lot of it, and I want to make sure I say this right. Because Uriah Smith said that Turkey was the king of the north. Did I say that correct? That's correct, right? Said that Turkey was
Yes.
the king of the north.
Yes.
Okay. And James White and Ellen White disagreed with him. And we have the papacy in place of all of that. But when you actually go back into that history, you have Napoleon. He does attack the papacy, and this is something that Elder Parmenter says that I need to look at in other presentations more, but that Islam in the first and second woe, they did not finish the job on the papacy. So who finished the job on the papacy?
Napoleon, France.
Napoleon, right? So that's one story, and that's a true story. I don't mean it to be false or anything, but that's in terms of how we've been receiving this message. There are many components and moving parts, and I find it hard to hold them all in my head at the same time. So that's one part of end time events, right? In that history.
Correct.
And then he goes on to, if anybody has also looked at this, watched those videos, 2019 to 2020 was when he was doing a lot of this and showing the articles on that Josiah Litch gave, that because we know that the empowerment of the first angel and the arrival of the second angel, August 11th, 1840, correct? I say that correct?
Yes.
So this was and that history was when the four sultans gave their power over to the great powers of Europe. And so decreasing then is the Islamic threat, and the great powers of Europe. That's why I wanted to, we're not going to get to that video tonight, but there's a few good videos that I think will help us on some of this stuff as we start to try to really review the history. But so you have it back in 1798, Napoleon gives the deadly wound on the papacy. But what does Napoleon do after that? Does anybody remember what Napoleon does after that?
He becomes a dictator.
Yeah, he becomes a dictator. Where does he go? Does anybody remember where he goes? We'll have to review those.
After taking down the papacy?
Troy says Egypt.
Yeah, I was just gonna say Egypt, right?
And he goes to Egypt. He goes to Egypt after taking out the papacy. And his purpose, does anybody remember his purpose for going to Egypt?
Wasn't it art or something? Like archaeology or something? He took scientists or something with him?
No,
That
I
did
think he
happen as
wanted,
well, but that's not the point. Go ahead. Yeah, sorry, somebody said something.
yeah, no, he wanted to take down England.
Britain. Is it Britain?
Yeah, Great Britain, yeah, England. He wanted to take down because
Yeah.
they were mortal enemies.
Yes, yes. And how was he going to do that?
Well, he was
This
going to
didn't
go
have
through,
anything to do with the papacy, right?
no, he had to go, he wanted to go through Egypt. Because India, Great Britain or England, its power was waning, and their main source of income was trade with India. So he wanted to take down, he wants to take down England through going through Egypt and then going to India. And when he destroys, his thought is when he destroys India, that would stop the income from India to Britain and weaken them even further. And I think that was a strategy, but it failed. And he left Egypt in a vacuum.
Yeah, so he goes, I think you mentioned India. India was I remember the words that the prime minister used, cash cow, but there's the crown and the jewel, something like that, the crown and the jewel for Britain. And they at that time had the Suez Canal wasn't quite built, but they still had a way, I don't remember what it's called, a canal, yeah, that they were able to go through there, but they did not have the Suez Canal done yet, in there yet. But they did have a way to go down through there, and so he wanted to go in there to make his way to India and open up trade routes to take that away, that cash cow, basically, from Great Britain. And so Egypt, the king of the south, pushes against him, Napoleon. Napoleon gets beat by Egypt, the king of the south. And then the king of the north, Turkey, comes at him with like a whirlwind with chariots and ships and horses. And Napoleon is defeated by the king of the north, and he returns home. And it's at that battle that begins this war that escalates into that 10-year Syrian war between Egypt and Turkey. Because if I remember right, Egypt and Turkey were both Muslim. But Egypt was, if I have the right word, like a vassal, so to speak.
Yeah, Egypt was a vassal of
Turkey.
Turkey, but Egypt was promised coal Syria
Yes,
by Turkey,
and then he didn't get it.
and then Turkey reneged on the deal,
Correct.
and therefore Egypt got angry and retaliated.
Correct. So, and then you come to that 10-year Syrian war, culminated in 1840, when the four sultans give their power over to the great powers of Europe. Then when you follow that in to just kind of trying to give a little bit more background to pieces that I do remember of, when you follow that in and you get to the late 1800s, early 1900s, and then going into World War I, the Middle East is part of World War I, and that's what's kind of got me thinking about all this to what we're seeing today, because the Middle East is a part of World War I, and they're also a part of I'm not saying a cause or anything like that, but they're a part of, or being affected, let's put it that way, maybe that's the best way to say it, by what is happening when the Jews do begin to go back. Because the Jews, it was Britain, I believe, that started to return the Jews. That's when the Zionists were going back to, that was in the early 1900s, I think, or late 1800s, when they actually began to go back. And then you go up to World War II, and after World War II, they're all sent back to their homeland. And so there's all that. And Elder Tess brought some of that out also in the Vespers classes. So you had in 1989, or take it back to 1979, the 10 years, you have the Iranian Revolution. And I was reading up on some of that last night. With the Iranian Revolution, between the Shia and the Sunnis, and and I don't know if anybody knew this, but yes, India, part of World War I, yes. That the Muslim world is, I hope I have this, it's in my notes in the other room, 85% Sunni and only 15% Shia. But they've had this battle since Muhammad's death. They've had this battle. And the difference between the two, or the debate between the two, is, I think some of us already know this, or probably all of us, that the debate between the two was, one believed that Muhammad's successor should go through the bloodline of Muhammad, and his cousin / son-in-law would have been the successor. And then the other group wanted to, I thought it was interesting the way the article that I was reading it on, they wanted qualified people. I was thinking about Elder Parmenter's presentation. They wanted qualified people to succeed, to succeed after Muhammad. And so the Sunnis, correct me if I got this wrong, because I'm fresh reading this last night, trying to remember which one. That's what actually caused the split between the Shia and the Sunni, how they became about, the Sunnis and the Shias. So what you see today is this, you have the Sunnis and Shias, but within each group, you also have the different factions. So, like, for instance, Saudi Arabia, not all of Saudi Arabia is obviously radical Islam. And I think somebody put a comment in there that we have to remember that not all Islam is radical Islam. And that's true. But the Sunnis and Shia, they have different factions, and they're spread about in various parts. So we're not going to get to it, I'm pretty sure tonight, but I'll save that video, because it's going to bring us, that video brings us almost to the point, because I think the video was created just before the attack of what the Houthis did in Yemen. And so anyways, in 79 to 89, you have the Iranian Revolution, which is Shia, and they believe in a religious political leader, that their cleric be their leader, their political leader as well. And then and wanting to spread the Shia sect of Islam throughout the Middle East. And so this fight, a lot of this fight, and they said, from what I've been reading, it's on the Council of Foreign Relations, that they get along side by side for many, many years without any problems, and they even intermarry. But with what began in the Middle East, going from all the oil, where the oil is discovered, and all the battles with that, and territorial lands, the coming out of World War I and dividing up and creating the borders, and all of that has built up to this place to where we're at today. But going back to back to 1979 to 1989, you see that's prior to the end of the Cold War, and you have the Iranian Revolution, then you have the Iraq-Iran War. Building up to that place, you also then have Russia invade Afghanistan. And then what we said earlier is that was the beginnings of the coming together of, I don't think it was Al-Qaeda yet, but it was the beginnings of radical Islam rising on the scene. And you have bin Laden, and he went in and trained people in, mute that. He went in with his background and such. I don't want to know if it was him specifically training, but he was a leader, and built up this aggression back against Russia, and then the United States supporting as well. I believe at that time Russia is defeated, while the King of the South is defeated, and the Cold War ends, right? The Cold War is right there, is right in that time period ending, and you have Islam rising up. So when you go back to 1798, you see that battle building between with the Ottoman Empire, and you have that you have Turkey and the King of the North, and you have Egypt, the King of the South, that are at the time, as Fell said, that Egypt was basically a vassal, but it built into that war. So it built up into that war. I hope that's about enough background that I can give without us going through some more notes at another time. But just to take it to looking at Islam, not all of Islam being radical Islam, we know that many of them are peaceful people. But you definitely have the different factions of radical Islam. Hamas is definitely Sunni, and then like Hezbollah, definitely Shia, and the Houthis are Shia, and all of it culminates globally, anyways, within that area of Yemen, because that's that passageway that people need to get through for all the global trade, all the ships to go through with all the global trade. I don't know if anybody has any comments. I tried to do that from memory, probably did it poorly.
That was really well done.
Yes, very well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
those-
Yeah, quite something.
So the mindset in my research, the mindset of the radical Islamic mindset, and not all Muslim people are radical, but it's just so happened the ones that are radical, they have all the power and they have all the money, and the ultimate goal is to have a worldwide caliphate and to have Sharia law worldwide. And the reason why, well, they would take Israel out completely because they just, Israel should not even exist to them in that region, because for whatever reason, because they're so Western and they're just not like them. They're not like the other Arab people, or people that they're different. They don't like people who are different, and they give too much liberty, and they just, that's just not part of their mindset. So America, in order for all these different Arab nations to come together, they would do it to take America out, because America is stopping them from having a worldwide caliphate, because America's ruining it. They're spreading their evil democracy all over the world, and the more they do that, the less chances that these radical Muslims are going to be able to rule the world, and Allah is going to be king of the world. That's kind of how they think. So that's the mindset. And there's the people who are against the Palestinians. is Hamas. Hamas has killed more Palestinians. You'll never read about it, but in order to know about that, the truth, you have to actually go to people who experienced it themselves. You have to go to real Palestinians, people who have lived in it, people who have been part of Hamas themselves and defected and gotten out and have come to the West and now are safe. Because if they come back, if they ever, go back to that region of the world, they'll be killed and all their whole family. So you listen to the people who know what's really going on, the people who are really subjugating the Palestinians and rendering them as slavery and human shields and are using them is Hamas. Hamas doesn't care at all about the Palestinian people. The leaders of Hamas, they live in Qatar. They live in Doha. They live in the Four Seasons. They have billions of dollars that are donated to Hamas for the Palestinian people, and the Palestinian people get none of that money. None of it. The Palestinian people are categorized as refugees for a reason. They have to keep the Palestinians refugees so that they have control over the situation, especially when it comes to the UN. Because Palestinian, when you look at refugees, the label refugees, there's certain, if you're in the UN, there's certain bennies that you can use the Palestinian people the Palestinian people are being used by the UN. They're being used by Arab nations, the people in high places. If the Arab people all over the world, the different Arab countries that surround that region, if they really cared about the Palestinians, why doesn't Egypt open their borders? Why is the first minute that this tragedy happens on October 7th, Egypt closes the border and doesn't allow any Palestinians in at all? Why does that happen? Why would Egypt not want to help Palestinian people? Because unfortunately, Palestinian people has a real reputation, and Arab nations know that. No Arab nations want the Palestinian people. No Arab nation. They went to Jordan. The King Hussein in Jordan wanted to help the Palestinian people. And he helped Arafat. And you know what Arafat did? You know what his whole PLO or his organization did? It's like a civil war. And the King Hussein had to kill a whole bunch of them and push them out of his country. They fomented total chaos. And then that was in Jordan. There was another country that went and helped them, and they did the same thing. Wherever the Palestinian people go, and the Arab nations know this, they create chaos. That's what they do. It's part of who they are. One person, he's called the son of Hamas. He actually was a son of one of the main leaders of Hamas, one of the biggest leaders of Hamas. And he came out, he defected. He came out, he actually went undercover and helped Israel. And the reason why he did that was because he saw what Hamas was doing to his own people. And when he saw what Hamas was doing to his own people, he realized, because he started to use his own brain to think for himself, and he started to realize this is wrong. And he talks about how it's the culture growing up in a Palestinian home and culture is a culture of, it's a rape culture for one, and it's a death culture. Because they don't value life. So death is just, this just to kill somebody is just not a big deal. And rape culture, there's not just women, a lot of children are raped. And rape is used as a form of power and control. And it's brainwashing too. A lot of it is brainwashing. So the people who are really, and of course, you're not going to find this on the news. You ain't going to see it on CNN. You ain't going to see it on, any of the news. It's just not going to be there. But if you talk to the people who were there, who lived it, who were in it, they're telling, the son of Hamas, he said, when this October 7th thing happened, and they wanted to release, Hamas was saying, well, we want, all these prisoners of war released. Well, when Hamas, the son of Hamas, he knew all those people that are in those jails. He said, these are terrorist people. They are evil, evil people. He said, we should not, Israel should not be negotiating with these people. His solution was, all those people who are in prison in Israel, they should all be executed. And one of those people is his father, who was one of the main founders. And he said, even my father should be executed, because these people will never change. And when you're dealing with a terroristic situation where you're doing a negotiations and you're dealing with the devil, and so now you're negotiating with the devil, nothing good's going to come of that. And he said, it's a disaster what's happening over there. That because he knows what it's like. He was Hamas. He was part of Hamas, and he knows their mentality. And he knows that, you deal with them, they win. They always win, because they don't value life. Life doesn't mean anything to them. So when they kill people, and when people, he said when he had to go in prison, he was locked up in an Israeli prison for 24 months, I think he said. And in the Israeli prison, the Israelis don't really govern it. It's Hamas governs it. Hamas has taken over because there's all these Hamas prisoners. And so they just let Hamas do their thing. And so Hamas tortures, kills, and does all kinds of heinous things to their own people, Palestinians. Because when these prisoners come in, they're picked up, and immediately Hamas suspects you as a sympathetic to Israel and like a traitor or somebody, a spy. And so they start torturing you first. And then eventually torture turns into death. The only reason why he said he wasn't tortured because he was the son of one of the founding leaders. So he had, quote, some status. So they didn't touch him. But they did do other things, that he saw. And when he saw what was happening in the prisons, and he got out of the prisons after 24 months, his whole mindset changed about him being a member of Hamas, him being, even what his father was doing. He just is like, this is wrong. So, it's just amazing how you can get one person who grew up in a culture that was, most people are brainwashed, but he stopped to think, wait a minute, this is wrong. This is not right. I don't care who the people are. I don't care if you're this culture or that culture. What you're doing is wrong. And so, it's a people. He compared it to Isaac and Ishmael, and he said that Ishmael was always a warrior, and Isaac was a tent dweller, and he wanted to learn. So, Isaac represents the Jewish people because they're very innovative and they always like to learn and do things. And knowledge is knowledge to the Jewish culture is a very, very, very prestigious thing. It's something that they, embed into their children and their culture. Whereas Ishmael, he was a warrior, he was a fighter. And in the mindset of Hamas is, in order to have any kind of status in that culture, you have to be a warrior. You have to carry a gun. If you don't have a gun, or if you don't own weapons, you have no status there. In order to have status in Gaza, you have to have weapons, and you have to be a warrior. And so he said that is the mentality, and the same mentality goes for Esau and Jacob. Was it Jacob and Esau? Esau was a warrior, and Jacob was, he was like a tent dweller, and stuff like that. And so he says the same thing. And then you could take it back to, Cain and Abel, And so the same parallels, so he shared that mentality. So the mentality that you're dealing with, what he's saying is these people, Hamas and all these terroristic, and Hamas and all these other terroristic, ISIS and all these terrorists, they're just part of the Muslim Brotherhood. Nobody ever talks about the Muslim Brotherhood. But you know what he said? The Muslim Brotherhood is the mother. And all these other Hamas and ISIS's, they're the daughter. He used that same parallel. He says, really, the main one is the Muslim Brotherhood, which America doesn't even consider a terrorist organization, but they're the ones, that's the mother of all these little factions that are going on. So you don't hear about that, but they are. So, he sees what's going on. These are people that he said you cannot reason with them. You can't. It's just, they will never, they've brainwashed the whole world. He's got the whole world thinking that Israel is punishing these poor Palestinian people. They got the whole world duped, when actuality, Israel is really trying to protect their own people, because they're living next to the most crazy people on planet Earth. And we have to understand, what if that happened here? What would we do as Americans if things like that happened? Okay, of course there would be war. Israel is in war. How do nations become nations? They go into war and then somebody wins. Okay, that's what happened in the 6-Day War. They went to war. As a matter of fact, in the 6-Day War, Israel was truly outnumbered. I mean, the countries that went up against Israel, it was Egypt and Syria and Jordan and Iraq and Lebanon. I mean, and Lebanon, all these countries came up against Israel. I'm not pro-Israel. I'm just giving you the facts. Okay. Israel, I think they had like 260,000 people, and all of the Arab nations totaled up 460,000. And then the aircrafts, the Arab nations had 800 aircrafts, and Israel had 275 aircrafts. And then the tanks, the Arab nations had 2,500 tanks. Israel had 800 tanks. And in 6 days, Israel won. Fair and square. That's how you make a nation. That's how countries are conquered. You go to war and you win. Nobody stole anything. They won. They fought and they won. And that's how it happens. There ain't no stealing nothing. And so that's how I see it. I look at the facts. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what the news says. But when you go into the history, you see the facts.
I wanted to just ask a question first. When going back to what is our test, and how should we be looking at this based on our test? And that would be how these nations behave when it comes to gender issues. And then I do want to bring up that there's a couple comments in here just to consider, and maybe others would want to comment. There's a couple comments in here, and then a few people have also shared their agreement with the comment, disagreeing with that view, and to be sure to check the sources and their biases. One of them, and then I'll just go back to the last one that Mary put in, that Hitler said that the Jews were evil people, and that rhetoric sent many people to the gas chambers, and not all Palestinians are Hamas. And Mary says, in my country under colonialism, we were demonized. We're called scavenger people eating people. Beware of false testimony about another. We were humans. She says, I relate with Palestinians. Their suffering is mine, and that this is not good. So I thought I'd go ahead and bring that up there if anybody wants to comment, because it is a safe place for us all to discuss. And if anybody has anything they want to
But
add.
I was just want to let you guys, I'm not dehumanizing. I was explaining to you what the son of Hamas and many others that came out of that with their lives, because most of them, they don't come out with their lives, and actually have lived it, been in it. And that's what their testimony is. And they don't get the news. They don't get to be on the news. So this is just another, like I say, I'm not on anybody's side. I'm not on Israel's side. But I'm just looking at the facts of what's really happening. And there is a rape culture and there is a death culture. And that I know for sure. That I know for sure.
Anybody else? So yeah, I would, for my own self, I've kind of tried to really, and it's hard for me sometimes to train my mind to think of this in terms of gender equality, because sometimes we can get really wrapped up in the details and the noise, and which takes our focus off of how does this relate to gender equality, looking at, for instance, how do the Palestinians treat their women? And we already heard from Elder Tess about her comments on that, and said that it's hard to find information. I've tried to find some information, found bits and pieces of it. They're not, they're very patriarchal. And then you have Israel that actually stands for, LGBT people community have rights there. So I think we have to remember to keep that all in perspective as we watch all these events in the world, that we be able to watch them through kind of above the details. I don't know if that's the right way to say that. Maybe somebody has a better way to say that. And instead of getting involved in the various things that are being said, some might be propaganda, some might be, show bias, but just to keep all that in mind. I only brought it up, Donna, because there were a few people that were talking about it, and I thought we should have an open discussion about it, but I don't know if anybody wants to know. I left it open for people to talk, but nobody wants to say anything, so but I think it's good to talk about it.
I think after all we've been through in the last 7 meetings, we're all a bit gun shy about say anything, because I don't want to sound like I'm attacking at all, because I value what you say, Donna.
I think this group can have a healthy discussion, and I think
Yeah.
Donna would agree to that too, even
Okay.
even if we see things different. And Donna, you feel free to
Yeah.
speak for yourself. I don't want to speak for you.
I totally agree, and I don't feel it take any offense. It's just it's something to think about. It's looking at, it's something maybe we never considered, maybe, but I always, there's always questions, about what's going on there. And I always know, this is one thing I know, oftentimes the way the masses go is always wrong. And so, so that with that, that thing, I just wanted to do more research, and I wanted to understand the culture and why what the culture, what the mindset is down there, what's happening. And if I said that all Palestinians are bad, I didn't mean that. If I did say that, I said that there is a culture, there's a way that a mindset that is fostered from very young, and this is taken from Palestinians that grew up there and actually lived it. And so their testimonies, and some of them are famous today, and do their talking, whatever, but they don't get mainstream media. Just like Joe Biden, he's doing all these wonderful things, but he's not getting the same coverage as Donald Trump or other people are. He just doesn't get it. He doesn't get it, and I don't understand it, because he's done so much wonderful things. I mean, he really has done like some of the things that, like, major things, So anyway, it just sickens me to think that, even the media is it's just, and I'm not an ageist. I'm not against, there's people, well into their old ages that have done amazing things all throughout history, and they were all old. And so to say that once you get 80, you're like, you got Alzheimer's, and that's not true. There's lots of people who are, major people. Just look it up on, major elderly people that have done amazing things, And so I'm not an ageist. I don't believe that just because you're a certain age. I mean, it's all about your abilities. I mean, what can you do? I don't know. I'm not into that ageist stuff.
I think Ava was.
I want to say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
I am I'm looking at what Israel is doing to Palestine, taking advantage and forgetting that they were slaves, at one point, and foreigners, and they're attacking the Palestinians in that way. We're all aware of that, and it's like nonstop. What I'm trying to understand is from what I heard you, Donna, saying. I'm sorry I didn't catch the beginning of that, but would you say that Hamas is like a group, basically a patriarchal, narcissistic type of system that has, that the Palestinians have allowed to be, and has caused, all this toxicity in their culture. And then, and add to that their religious belief, where they go to heaven when they die, they're in the paradise. And I see so many of them almost like they're not even like sad, like they're sad, but they're not sad because they're in heaven now. Like, and that's the part that really threw me off, because I'm seeing how they're so religiously believe in that so much that death is not, like, it's not even a bad thing after all. So do you think, Donna, that that's like because of what you described, the way that they have experienced that, like through especially the Hamas? I don't know a lot of that, but
Okay, so from
yeah.
my research, I have just learned that what Hamas is doing is nothing new. They are a militant terrorist organization that has total control over Gaza and the Palestinian people. They have billions of dollars at their fingertips, and they will not spend a dime on the Palestinian people. Not a dime. The leaders of Hamas are living in the Four Seasons in Qatar, in Doha, Qatar. They're living it up. Their lives are great. They have billions of dollars at their hands. They have.
Okay, I'm seeing that. So you're saying that, can you say that they're not the religious group, really, that they're just taking advantage of
They're
that?
not religious. They're not religious at all. They're just taking.
Yeah.
They want power. They
Yeah.
want, again, they do, it's all about control. They don't really care about religion, but they do want control, and they do want to eventually set up a caliphate. And we know that is religious, but they're not religious. But again, they use the caliphate so that they can have control, ultimately.
Okay, so then would you categorize the Hamas the same as the Zionist? Like the Zionists, how they have attacked the Palestinians in the past? Would you say like they're basically the same groups? Like the Zionists for the Israelites, so-called representing Israel, but they're really terrorist group. And we can safely say then Hamas is the terrorist group really representing the Palestinians, but they're not, because they're not really religious after all. Can you say that then? You would say Zionists for the Israelites and then Hamas for the Palestinians? I'm kind of comparing that, that they're like, you could categorize that?
Well, I couldn't categorize the Zionists as a terrorist organization. I don't know if any country, I don't know, is America called them a terrorist organization?
No, just because of what they did, though. Remember that they, back in the Second World War, I think, I'm trying to remember if they started then or back in the 1920s, how they're the ones that they're, I think, the ones that started getting the Palestinians, like ousting them from Palestine, from what I've read. So that's why I'm saying, like, is that kind of the equality of that? At least that's what I'm kind of seeing that. They might not use the exact same tactics, but it's still like the ideology,
There There was a time
Yeah.
for, that in the early days, that the Palestinians and the Israelites, they lived together in peace.
Oh, yeah.
They lived together. They didn't have any kind of, they just lived peaceful people. They shared cultures and foods, and it was a,
Yeah, but I think that was before the Zionists started interfering from what I saw the documentary. I think that once the Zionists came out, and I think the founder of that came from, I want to say Eastern Europe, and I can't remember for sure his name, but I believe that when when this belief of the Zionists started, it's when there was a real big push back to the Palestinians were like started being ousted from their
you know,
Palestine.
you know what year that was?
I want to say like early 20s. I have to check my info. But that's why I was just comparing. Like it looks like Zionists are the terrorists from Israel, and then the Hamas for the Palestinians. But anyway, that's my thought. I need to be more documented about it because I don't know. Yeah.
I cannot consider Zionism as terrorist organization. I don't see that. I don't know. Has anybody known that the Zionists have been labeled a terrorist organization?
Yeah, I don't think they've been labeled as that, but they're the ones that have
Because
like the Palestinians, like I said, and I believe I think it could have started like the beginning of the First World War or Second World War, but it was done in very subtle ways. So that's why I'm not, it's
so
not like terrorist. Yeah.
yeah,
But anyway, yeah, I'll get back to you on that. Yeah, more
Yeah.
detail. But I was just, thinking of that, comparing with Hamas. Okay, that was my comment or my question. Yeah.
I think it's good to go back and we're obviously going to be running out of time. I'm not going to do this tonight, but consider the purpose of, from the bigger picture, consider the purpose of these. I don't mean the various groups as in the various factions of Islam, but when it comes to the papacy, the Protestants, the king of the north, the king of the south, and understanding what's going on there and how it pertains to raising up the angry horse that's seeking to break loose. Because I think we could get too wrapped up in the various details, right or wrong, and lose sight on the bigger picture of how what is happening, what role what is happening plays in the angering of the the angry horse rising up and God letting loose. Fel or Logina, you have your hand up.
Yes. So going back to my original question regarding the Army of Rome, Sunday law, the attack of Islam. I think you answered the question when you did a wonderful job of putting all the pieces together. So I just want to make sure that that I got it. So there's three Romes. There's pagan Rome, papal Rome, and modern Rome, which we are now living in the time period of modern Rome. So it seems to me that it doesn't matter who makes the Sunday law. Whoever makes the Sunday law is when Islam attacks that particular country, whether it's pagan Rome or papal Rome or modern Rome. You make the Sunday law and you're going to feel the wrath of Islam, radical Islam. So am I correct in understanding it that way?
Yeah, just repeat that last little bit. I got distracted by Susan's post. Sorry. I don't multitask like I used to. It's the last piece of it because I followed you through the whole thing.
Yeah, so because it's not papal Rome, it's modern Rome who's going to make the Sunday law. So because it's because of the Sunday law that we're going to feel the wrath of Islam, the modern Rome is.
Yeah, and I think
So-
it's good. Go ahead, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So am I correct in understanding that in that
Ye-
way?
Yes, the best that I understand it thus far is, and the other point that's made is when Ellen White, in commenting on, and this is open up a whole new can of worms, no way we're going to tackle tonight, but when Ellen White comments on Daniel 11, is it Daniel 11:40 or 35:30? I think it's when she's in 35 to 39 in there somewhere. But the comment where she makes, you'll be familiar, this will sound familiar, when she says seems similar to this. So those kinds of things are sticking in my mind, seems similar to this. So that history there from verse 35 to verse 39, and understanding, is it a repeat and enlarge? When you get to verse 40, what is it and who are all these players? So that's what I'm hoping to be able to put together for us to understand. But the scene similar to this is, you see one scene that is seen is how pagan Rome makes a Sunday law. And as a result of that, you have the first 4 trumpets, and that culminates in the falling of pagan Rome and now the putting in place of papal Rome. So taking her comment seems similar to this, then you would see, when you're going to see papal Rome rise, you're going to see something else be taken down first. Fall away? Is that the right way to say that? So you have pagan Rome is taken out of the way to give rise to the papacy. You're going to have then modern Rome taken out of the way, the best that I understand it, to give rise to the papacy. There's a whole lot that we need to understand about this history, really a lot. And I'm trying to go back and do a lot of review to just have the history of it in place, and going back into the history of, when you have, and I want to say, because I think is Mary still with us? Well, Mary must have cut, because I think it was Mary. Somebody was asking when I did do that brief Islam review several weeks back, because I couldn't remember the dates, all the dates. I remembered 606 as a date, but it wasn't 606. 606 is when he went to the cave, and I think we were talking about his birth. I think I was saying his birth, but I wasn't sure, and nobody was sure or wasn't answering. So 606 is when he went to the cave. And somebody else brought up, I think it was Mary again, didn't he go to the Persian leader, Muhammad? Didn't Muhammad go to the Persian leader? And yes, he did. And I have that for another study as well, what he said to the Persian leader. So he went to the Persian leader to want to invite him, so to speak, to denounce his faith, the faith, and I think it was Mithraism. Is that what it was with Persia? But anyways, to denounce their faith, their religion, and to embrace the Islamic religion. And the Persian Khosrows rejected that invitation. And it was, that was at the culmination of this long war between pagan Rome and Persia, between Rome and Persia. And it was in that there, because I think we need to really understand the different places where Islam came on the scene and where Islam gained power. And that's one area there where Islam gains power. So Muhammad sends a message to Khosrows. Khosrows rejects that invitation, and Islam would have banded together with Persia and defeated Rome. And Persia didn't feel they needed that help. And then Persia winds up defeated by Rome. And we know that Rome then was depleted, basically, from how long the war had lasted. And that began the spread of Islam. So we need to be more, I think, more focused in understanding the rise of Islam in the various histories, And then also the restraint of Islam, so that we can come to better understand what it means here. But what you're asking, Phil, yes, pagan Rome makes a Sunday law, and that brings on the first four trumpets, and it culminates in the falling away of pagan Rome, although we know that paganism just marries into the church. But then you have the papacy put on the throne, and have the title, and they make a Sunday law, and that brings on the fifth and sixth trumpet. So we know that the first two trumpets, I mean, the first two woes, the first woe plus the second woe equal the third woe. So you're going to see in the third woe all that the first and second woe, all that the first and second woes are built into the third woe. So we see that at 9/11. We see the harbinger. We see, because there's first the hurt, and then there's the kill. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. Yeah, I believe that your work on Islam, when you put it all together, it's going to be very beneficial to all of us.
Well, I hope so, because we know that that's what's coming, and trying to put in place and understand. Oh, I believe we have a good idea of the Sunday law when it pertains to gender equality, inequality, and all the laws that are being put in place, and all the rights that are being taken away. So you go through the 60s, and you have the sexual revolution, and you have the civil rights movement, the sexual revolution, and then you have also Stonewall. You have all these people fighting for the rights. You go through the AIDS crisis, and you see, and I'm also thinking about how, and this is why I wanted to kind of bring us back to this, because I think looking at Islam from a bigger picture, when they rise, why they rise, what brings it about, but also that the AIDS virus always makes me think of this most, and this is typical though, is go back to how did the radical feminism come about? How did radical feminism, we talked about this once before, how did radical feminism come about? The simple answer. Anybody remember that how women shared their stories and found that they were experiencing a lot of the same commonality, and they collectively come together. Yeah, commonalities. So they come together. So you go to the AIDS crisis as well. So you have this fight now. Now you fast forward into the AIDS crisis, and you have all these people dying, and no one's doing anything about it. And you have the gay men and the lesbian women and the feminists all fighting amongst each other until they realized that collectively they had those commonalities. Is that the right word? They have these commonalities, that they're all being oppressed, and they come together. So something, to me, and I don't have it proved, but I think that if we all work on it, maybe we can come to some better growing and understanding that something, when that angry horse lets loose, would there not have to be something that brings them all together?
Yes, a catalyst.
Right?
It has to be a catalyst, yes.
And
we're seeing that. We're seeing the build up to that.
That's what I think too.
I was thinking, because we were talking about this morning during Stonewall. We were talking because we've been looking into why people hate transgenders so much, but it's the same thing. They got fed up, right, with the police coming in and raiding and arresting and harassing the LGBTQ community. And I believe, although you can't prove it because none of us were there and there's different stories, but many had said that Marsha P. Mason was the one who threw the first brick. But regardless, but Marsha P. Mason was transgender. But what I want to say, regardless of whether that's true or not, the transgender, just like you're saying, what happened with AIDS, they all came together for that cause. But right, and that's how they began to get a voice, was they all came together, the lesbians, the gays, the transgenders, during that portion. But as soon as they got their voice, the very first group that they oppressed and pushed out was the transgender. And it was making me think about, same with Israel, right? Israel was horribly oppressed, right? Under Hitler and all that entailed. And then they get their place, but then they aren't happy with just that space, and they start pushing and reneging on, because initially the Palestinians, they wondered if it was going to cause trouble. You know, if you go back and you look at that history, and Israel just kept kind of pushing them out of their areas and giving them less and less rights, until you get down to today, right? To where they're just on that little strip of land. And they're oppressing, they've turned into the oppressors, right? The very ones who had been oppressed became the oppressors. Anyhow, the same with the LGBTQ and Stonewall. They had been oppressed, but what do? They oppress the transgender, right? I was just kind of thinking about that. And how, how the ones that, like, what's the parable about the one that is supposed to forgive because his debts were forgiven, but he's the very one that would go, oh, help me with that parable. He's the very one that would go and cause usury when he loaned money, right? He didn't give the same forgiveness to, even though he was forgiven of his debts with mercy. When people came under debt to him, he held a heavy hand and didn't give the same respect that he was given. And you see
Yeah, and
that
then he was
play
forgiven
out.
more. I was gonna say he was forgiven a greater debt
Yeah,
than and then he was ungrateful because somebody else
Yeah.
owed him a little tiny bit and he couldn't even, like, he wanted it all back.
yeah, and thank you, Ava. That's that mindset, kind of, that selfishness and forgetfulness of where and what you've been through. You would think that the people who've been oppressed would be the very ones that would jump in to help others, because they would have empathy for others. I know when Trump was first oppressing, right? And he started with the women, right? And he used that horrible P word, that famous tape where he said he could grab women by the you know what. And then he went after the disabled journalist and stood there making fun of the disabled journalist, right? And one by one, he picked them off. But what was brought out was, like, the LGBT community went in and spoke up for the disabled community, and the African American community or Black community, I don't know which, or people of color, whatever. I don't know what people want to hear on that, what is most pleasing. But the people of color went in and helped the Mexican community when Trump was saying all Mexicans are rapists and drug addicts and all that. They went in and spoke up for that community. And there was that kind of empathy down the line for the different groups, right? And you just don't see that, you see this horrible oppression. Anyway, that was all I wanted to say.
We didn't get very far in the article, but it's all good discussion. Thank you. And hopefully it was a healthy discussion. And we can all do our, do our investigating, our research and such. And hopefully we all come to the same place always. And we work together. I know we can, especially God being guiding us as well. So we'll have to pick this up either Friday or Wednesday, next Wednesday. Any last comments before we close in prayer? Susan, would you like to close us in prayer?
Sure, I will. You'll probably hear Ruby snoring. She's sitting right here.
Okay.
Okay, we could bow our head. Dear living God, thank you so much, Lord, for how you've worked with each one of us, Lord. I think back of how twisted up in our thinking we were, and how you've given us such wonderful leaders who have given us such clear lines of truth with waymarks and history to help us navigate the history that we are walking through, Lord. Thank you, Lord, for this group, this fellowship. Lord, the peace we had tonight, that we were able to share. I think some of us have been so wanting to share, Lord, and it just hadn't felt safe. And Lord, thank you for the correction you've given us with Elaine and Mary, reminding us, Lord, that there's a lot of noise. Simple thing like that, but so true, Lord. There's a lot of noise, and help us stay focused, because you can feel the anxiousness and the fear rising all around. But Lord, keep peace within our group, and keep peace within our hearts and homes, Lord, and continue to work with each one of us so that we can understand and juggle all these concepts, Lord, and be able to make sense out of them and be able to simply repeat them back. Thank you so much, Lord, for the unity that you're providing, for the encouragement that we can give to each other, Lord, because we're the only people on this planet, Lord, that can understand one another. And we're so grateful that you've chosen to reveal these truths to us. So, Lord, give us a good night's rest. And I hope I haven't forgotten something important to pray for. I'm sure people have things on their heart that are troubling them, Lord. And I know you're aware of that. So please remember each and everyone's personal prayer requests to you, Lord. And again, thank you so much for your faithfulness and mercy to us. And we pray all this in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Amen.